Man, I'll give you $1,000,000, whatever it takes. You know, it's like exaggerated speech. But of course, when we interview Keefe D, he's like, yeah, that's what the agreement amount was, $1,000,000.
It's 2020, y'all. Yeah. And it's different than when it was in 2016. You know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We had a black billionaires lunch. Yeah. You understand? Right. And we here together, and we're gonna keep standing.
For 30 years, the same whisper has echoed through hip-hop. Who really pulled the strings behind Tupac Shakur's death? Now, according to recently unsealed federal documents, sealed testimonies, and troubling new evidence, an explosive theory has surfaced, one that points fingers at two of music's most powerful figures, Sean Combs and Jay-Z. These are not idle rumors. FBI agents, million-dollar contracts, and decades of buried records are being dug up, and what they reveal could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the 7th of September, 1996. Tonight, we follow the trail back to the night it all began, the 30th of November 1994, Quad Recording Studios in Times Square. What should have been a routine session turned into an ambush that changed the course of a life. Tupac, short on cash and fighting legal battles he insisted were setups, answered a call from James, Jimmy Henchman, Roseman, offering $7,000 to cut a verse for Little Sean. Tupac arrived with his crew. On the surface, it looked like business as usual. Inside the lobby, however, the scene turned violent. Three men, focused and purposeful, closed in. They weren't ordinary muggers. Their target was unmistakable. Tupac Shakur. They demanded jewelry, cash, everything on him. But the way they moved, the precision of their actions, suggested something far more calculated than a random robbery. What follows in the documents is a web of alleged motives, contested loyalties, and transactions that stretch from New York boardrooms to the streets of Los Angeles. If these claims withstand scrutiny, they point to a conspiracy far deeper than the headlines ever allowed, one that implicates powerful industry players and raises brutal questions about how fame, money, and grudges intersected in those fatal years. This is not a closed case. These are allegations, yet the paper trail is growing. Over the next hour, we'll examine the newly revealed files, the testimony that's been kept under seal, and the inconsistencies that have haunted investigators for decades. Prepare to see the 7th of September, 1996 in a whole new light. When Tupac resisted and reached for his things, the attackers opened fire multiple times. 2 shots to the head, 2 to the groin, 1 to the hand. He barely survived. 1 bullet even grazed his skull. This was no ordinary robbery gone wrong. It reads like an attempted execution disguised as a heist. Even more chilling, Sean Combs and the notorious B.I.G. were reportedly upstairs in the same building that night, cutting their own session while Tupac was being set upon below. Same building, same night, same block. Coincidence? Tupac didn't buy it. In his much-discussed Vibe interview, he accused them of having advanced knowledge of the setup, saying, "They knew I was coming. They knew exactly when I'd be there." These allegations, whatever one believes, changed how many people saw that night, from a violent robbery to something darker and far more deliberate.
Do you think Puffy was involved in the shootings?
Only they can answer that question. Right. I have my own opinion, but I wouldn't slander their name like they did mine. Right. I wouldn't say things that I knew. You know what I mean? I believe, so I do believe.
And this is where Jay-Z enters the picture. Multiple sources allege that Jay-Z was deeply connected to the New York rap circles that were fueling the rising tensions with West Coast artists. According to industry insiders, he wasn't just aware of the friction, he knew about plans to send a message to Tupac for what many on the East Coast saw as blatant disrespect. The Quad Studios ambush wasn't some random street crime. It was the first domino in a larger, carefully orchestrated campaign, one that wouldn't reach its bloody climax until nearly 20 months later on the Las Vegas Strip. Fast forward to the 7th of September 1996. The night of the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand. Tupac and Suge Knight are in attendance, celebrating Tyson's quick victory. Everything seems perfect until hotel surveillance captures Tupac and members of Death Row violently confronting Orlando Anderson, a Southside Compton Crip. On the surface, it looked like a spur-of-the-moment brawl, but Anderson had allegedly tried to snatch a death row chain earlier that year. And now, recently unsealed federal documents suggest this MGM altercation wasn't just coincidence. It was the exact trigger certain East Coast factions had been waiting for, the perfect justification for retaliation. Later that night, Tupac and Suge are cruising down the Vegas Strip in a black BMW. They stop at a red light. Out of nowhere, a white Cadillac pulls up alongside them and gunfire erupts. Tupac is hit 4 times, once in the arm, once in the thigh, and twice in the chest. One bullet tears through his right lung. 6 days later, on September 13th, Tupac Shakur succumbs to his injuries at University Medical Center.
Near fatal, but he couldn't survive a second. Rap star Tupac Shakur last night after a brief life in a rough business. He was 25.
The official story points to simple gang retaliation, but FBI documents suggest something far more complex, one that tied East Coast moguls to million-dollar contracts and hired enforcers from Los Angeles gangs. What followed was darker than anyone imagined. For more than a decade, crucial evidence vanished, witnesses either recanted or disappeared, and the investigation stalled in plain sight. All the while, federal agents were quietly piecing together a case that hinted at a far larger conspiracy. March 9, 1997, just 6 months after Tupac's death, the notorious B.I.G. is gunned down in Los Angeles. The world assumes it's payback for Vegas, 2 of hip-hop's greatest icons eliminated within months. The so-called East Coast-West Coast war reaches its bloody crescendo. But here's the part the public rarely hears. Both killings were allegedly tied to the same shadow network of industry power players and organized crime figures. Federal investigators would later suggest that neither hit was about street beef at all. They were business decisions, cold, calculated eliminations, masked as gang warfare. Enter Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, the man who would eventually become the missing link in this puzzle. In 1998 and 1999, federal agents sat him down under a proffer agreement. Those early interviews are telling. Keefe flatly denied any role in Tupac's shooting. He pointed the finger at the Compton Police Department, claiming they were acting on Suge Knight's orders because Tupac planned to leave death row. He even went as far as to absolve his own nephew, Orlando Anderson, of pulling the trigger. Total denial, complete misdirection, and for years, that version stuck. The official narrative became one of dirty cops, record label rivalries, and West Coast power struggles. Meanwhile, the true orchestrators were building untouchable empires. Sean Diddy Combs catapulted Bad Boy Entertainment into global dominance. Jay-Z cemented Roc-A-Fella Records as an East Coast powerhouse. Both men rose to billionaire status while investigators in California chased ghosts.
It's 2020, y'all. Yeah. And it's different than when it was in 2016. You know, the game has been elevated. As we can tell, there's no expense being spared. We had a black billionaires lunch. Yeah. You understand? Right. And we here together and we're gonna keep standing.
But federal agents weren't entirely fooled. They knew Keefe D was lying about Tupac, but he was too valuable to discard. Instead, they kept him on as a confidential informant in drug cases. As the leader of a Southside Crips faction moving more than 360 kilos of cocaine and PCP, Keefe was a key piece in larger federal operations. The feds were playing the long game. Meanwhile, Jay-Z's alleged connection to the wider conspiracy stayed buried in whispers. Insiders within the music industry claimed the East Coast-West Coast feud wasn't just about records or respect. It was about money, market dominance, and territorial control. Eliminating Tupac wasn't personal revenge, it was business strategy. For nearly a decade, the cover-up worked flawlessly. The gang war narrative kept the public satisfied, while law enforcement focused on street-level soldiers. The real decision-makers stayed safe in their corporate towers, untouchable. By 2008, both Sean Combs and Jay-Z had become larger-than-life cultural icons. Combs had built an empire spanning television, fashion, and luxury spirits. Jay-Z married Beyoncé, cementing himself as hip-hop royalty and the first rapper officially recognized as a billionaire. To the world, it looked like the perfect success story. But behind the scenes, federal agents were about to uncover a different truth, one that threatened to shatter everything. December 2008. After 10 years of silence and misdirection, Keefe D finally breaks. Sitting across from LAPD detectives and FBI agents in a sterile interview room, he abandons the stories about rogue cops and death row drama. Section, it is calm. This time, he looks Detective Greg Kading dead in the eye and delivers the bombshell that would rewrite hip-hop history. Sean Diddy Combs had allegedly offered him $1 million to eliminate both Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight.
Now I'll give you $1 million, whatever it takes. You know, it's like exaggerated speech. But of course, when we interview Keefe D, it's like, yeah, that's the agreed amount was $1 million.
Picture the room falling into complete silence. Federal agents exchange uneasy glances as the recording equipment captures every word of what would soon be known as the most explosive confession in music industry history. Keefe D begins to outline the details. He describes a meeting with Eric "Zip" Martin, Diddy's close associate, who allegedly provided both the weapon and the logistical support. The mission was brutally simple: take out Death Row's leadership and pave the way for Bad Boy's unchallenged dominance on the West Coast. But then comes the revelation that changes everything. Jay-Z's name surfaces. Multiple sources claim that East Coast power brokers were quietly coordinating behind the scenes. According to Keefe, Jay-Z was allegedly aware of the retaliation plans and even supplied intelligence on Tupac's movements and vulnerabilities. Suddenly, the agents in the room realize they aren't dealing with a gang feud. They're staring down a corporate conspiracy involving some of the most powerful figures in hip-hop history. Yet there's a problem. They can't move on Keefe's confession immediately. The proffer agreement protects him, and larger investigations are still in motion, so the truth remains buried for now. Then, in 2009, another interview peels back yet another layer. Keefe admits that neither he nor his nephew Orlando Anderson ever received the full $1 million payment for Tupac's elimination. According to him, Eric "Zip" Martin kept the money for himself, sowing distrust and sparking fractures inside the very conspiracy that orchestrated one of music's darkest chapters.
The story that has circulated was that after Tupac got killed, Puffy allegedly gave the money to Zip.
Yes.
And Zip was supposed to give the money to Keefe and them.
Yes.
But he never gave it.
This detail is crucial. It explains why Keefe D eventually started talking. He felt double-crossed by the very East Coast mogul who had hired him, then left him unpaid and exposed. Federal records reveal just how deep the betrayal ran. DEA files documented 47 separate mentions of Diddy's name connected to Tupac's case. These weren't vague rumors. They were precise allegations, references to payments, meetings, coded conversations, and coordinated plans. By 2011, LAPD detective Greg Kading broke the silence. His book, Murder Rap, laid out years of investigation, exposing million-dollar contracts from music industry moguls to Los Angeles gangs aimed at wiping out rival artists. Kading's research revealed a disturbing pattern. East Coast and West Coast labels weren't just battling for chart dominance, they were outsourcing street soldiers to execute corporate agendas. The deaths of Tupac and Biggie, according to Kading, weren't random outbreaks of gang violence, they were boardroom-sanctioned business decisions. The book also shined a spotlight on Jay-Z's alleged role not as a triggerman but as an information broker. He was accused of supplying East Coast conspirators with intelligence on West Coast artists, their schedules, security weaknesses, even personal habits. That intel, investigators argued, proved critical in planning deadly operations. And here's the most chilling revelation of all. Federal agents began to see a bigger picture. Both Sean Combs and Jay-Z had allegedly built their empires on bones. Every platinum plaque, every lucrative deal, every award was stacked on top of eliminated competition. Still, the true architects of the conspiracy remained untouchable, shielded by armies of corporate lawyers and powerful connections. Then came 2017, the moment that shook the hip-hop world to its core. BET's Death Row Chronicles aired, and for the first time, millions watched as Keefe D publicly confessed to his role in Tupac's elimination. No more coded language, no more hidden agreements, just raw, unfiltered truth broadcast for the entire world to hear.
He looks over, he sees you.
Yeah.
He looks right at you.
Yeah, he looked at me.
The shots came from the back. Big Dre, Orlando. Who shot Tupac?
The keeper for the code of the streets. It just came from the back seat.
The interview sends shockwaves through the music industry. With chilling calm, Keefe D describes sitting in the front seat, receiving the weapon, handing it to Orlando Anderson in the back, and watching as his nephew pulled the trigger on hip-hop's brightest star. But the most devastating revelation isn't the mechanics of the hit, it's who ordered it. According to Keefe, the directive came straight from Sean Combs. The confession ignites a firestorm. Social media erupts with theories linking Jay-Z to the broader conspiracy. Fans begin dissecting old interviews, lyrics, and industry ties, uncovering unsettling patterns. Why did Jay-Z's career soar immediately after Tupac's death? Why has he remained largely silent about Tupac's influence on hip-hop? Then, in 2019, Keefe D publishes his memoir, Compton Street Legend, offering the most detailed insider account yet of the East Coast conspiracy. The book lays bare how music industry moguls weaponized gang networks to erase rivals while keeping their own hands clean. At one point, Keefe writes, Tupac chose the wrong game to play, and the wrong people to play with. It reads less like street bravado and more like a chilling indictment, a direct reference to corporate power brokers who saw Tupac not as an artist, but as an obstacle to market control.
You said what you did, and I don't know how you thought, because everybody associated with that situation, that would give you your green light to, this is a story. I was in that car. I didn't pull no trigger, but you were a part of that.
Keefe D's memoir goes even further, pulling Jay-Z into the spotlight. He claims the East Coast mogul provided detailed intelligence on West Coast artists, everything from Tupac's travel plans and security arrangements to his personal disputes. According to Keefe, this information was critical in orchestrating the Las Vegas hit, but here's where the story takes its darkest turn. Federal agents uncovered evidence suggesting that both Sean Combs and Jay-Z allegedly profited directly from Tupac's elimination. After his death, market share in hip-hop shifted dramatically. East Coast labels gained unprecedented control over distribution, airplay, and marketing, cementing their dominance in the industry. Meanwhile, Keefe D's public appearances only grew bolder. In YouTube interviews, he began laying out specifics of the conspiracy, meetings with executives who funneled money and logistical support to gang networks tasked with doing the dirty work. While he openly named Diddy, insiders knew the web extended further, hinting at Jay-Z's role within the broader machine. These revelations sparked mounting pressure on federal investigators. The narrative of gang retaliation was crumbling, replaced by the specter of a corporate-backed conspiracy. Finally, in 2018, the Las Vegas Police Department announced their investigation had been reopened, reinvigorated by new evidence. That evidence was Keefe D's own words, his explosive on-camera confessions implicating some of the most powerful figures the music industry has ever produced.
The feds are so deep and involved in this that Diddy just might be called up on that Tupac shit once they go through the money trail.
By 2023, federal investigators had finally built an overwhelming case against Keefe D, but the real breakthrough wasn't just about him, it was the paper trail. Bank transfers, intercepted communications, and witness testimonies all pointed to the same chilling conclusion. Tupac's elimination wasn't gang warfare, it was a calculated business decision. Then came the 29th of September 2023, the day everything changed. At his suburban home in Henderson, Nevada, Keefe D was arrested on first-degree murder charges. But behind the scenes, agents made it clear, Keefe wasn't the end game, he was the entry point. The real targets were the corporate architects, the moguls, and executives who ordered the hit, funded the networks, and profited from the fallout. News of the arrest sent shockwaves through music industry boardrooms. For decades, the narrative of East Coast versus West Coast had kept powerful figures safe. Now, with Keefe D facing life in prison, the stakes had never been higher. If he talked, the entire web of moguls, celebrities, and insiders who orchestrated hip-hop's darkest chapter could be exposed. The 29th of September, 2023, after 27 years of silence, cover-ups, and corporate protection, the walls finally began to close in. SWAT vehicles surrounded Keefe D's home, search warrants in hand, red and blue lights flashing across the Nevada night. For the first time since Tupac's murder, it felt like the truth might finally surface.
It's becoming more apparent that Dwayne Keefe D. Davis likely talked himself into his own indictment nearly 3 decades after Tupac Shakur. We now know more evidence considered by a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment against Dwayne Keefe D. Davis.
The arrest sends immediate shockwaves through the music industry. Keefe D is charged with first-degree involvement in Tupac's murder, but federal prosecutors make it clear he is just the beginning. The true targets are the corporate conspirators who allegedly ordered the hit. Court documents reveal decades of painstaking evidence. Bank records trace suspicious transfers from East Coast music companies to Los Angeles gang networks. Communication intercepts detail coordination between music executives and street operatives. Witnesses directly implicate both Sean Combs and Jay-Z in the elimination conspiracy. Then, in July 2024, the case erupts into public consciousness with the most explosive development yet. Clark County prosecutors release court filings explicitly accusing Sean Diddy Combs of orchestrating Tupac's murder. This isn't speculation or rumor, it's official federal allegations, backed by documented evidence and witness testimony, sending tremors through the very foundations of the hip-hop industry.
Family of Tupac Shakur is investigating a potential link between the Tupac and Sean Diddy Combs.
The court filings reveal Keefe D's 2009 police interview, in which he named Sean Diddy Combs as the mastermind behind the $1 million contract to eliminate Tupac. Federal agents later corroborated his claims with financial records showing payments from Bad Boy Entertainment funneled to intermediaries tied to Los Angeles gangs. But the real shock comes in October 2024. Tupac's family hires Alex Spiro, Jay-Z's personal attorney, to investigate any potential connections between their client and the murder plot. Industry insiders immediately recognized the move as damage control. Why would Jay-Z's lawyer represent Tupac's family unless there was something to hide? DJ Academics breaks the story, sending the internet into a frenzy. Allegedly, Jay-Z used his attorney to link Diddy to Tupac's case and deflect attention from his own potential involvement. The tactic backfires, fueling even more suspicion about Jay-Z's role in the conspiracy. Federal investigators respond by intensifying their probe into both moguls. Former FBI agent Phil Carson publicly remarks, "There are people out there that have information regarding the Tupac situation. They were close to Tupac, and they were close to Diddy." The message is clear. Federal agents know the key players and are methodically building cases across multiple targets.
Now, this investigation had been previously reported by unnamed sources, but earlier today, Spiro confirmed to our Court TV team that he and a team of investigators has been hired.
By early 2025, both Sean Combs and Jay-Z are reportedly under federal investigation for their alleged roles in orchestrating Tupac's elimination. Bank records, intercepted communications, and witness testimonies all point to a sprawling corporate conspiracy that spanned multiple music labels and funneled payments to gangs tasked with removing competition. The investigation makes one thing painfully clear: Tupac's death was not a random gang incident. It was a calculated business decision, executed by music industry executives who viewed Death Row Records' success as a direct threat to East Coast dominance. Federal prosecutors are reportedly preparing charges against multiple industry figures for operating a criminal enterprise under the guise of a legitimate business. The legal pressure intensifies when Kurt Burrows, former co-founder of Bad Boy Records, files a lawsuit detailing Diddy's alleged involvement in orchestrating Tupac's elimination. The filing includes insider testimony about high-level meetings where East Coast executives reportedly discussed permanently neutralizing the West Coast problem. The evidence amassed against the moguls is staggering. Federal files document 47 separate mentions of Diddy's name, recorded confessions from 2008-2009, LAPD interviews, and financial records all implicate him in the $1 million contract. Bank transfers from music industry accounts to Los Angeles gangs occurred immediately before and after Tupac's death. Jay-Z's involvement also becomes undeniable. Federal investigators uncover communication records showing East Coast executives coordinating intelligence on West Coast artists, phone logs, meeting schedules, and financial transactions all point to a multi-mogul conspiracy operating behind the scenes of the music industry.
Landslides don't happen slowly, right? You'll be standing on the side of a mountain admiring its beauty and glamour, and then 1 second later, you're buried in mud, right? This does not shock me. This does not surprise me. I can promise you this is not the last thing that we find out about people investigating Diddy and what he's done.
Tupac's family hiring Jay-Z's personal attorney created a massive conflict of interest, one that federal prosecutors have leveraged brilliantly. By representing the family while simultaneously protecting Jay-Z, Alex Spiro inadvertently tied both men to the same investigation. Former FBI agent Phil Carson has publicly dropped bombshells. Anything's on the table when it comes to prosecuting music industry figures. Multiple witnesses reportedly possess explosive information, linking corporate executives to the elimination of rival artists. Cross-jurisdiction cooperation between federal and local authorities suggests that charges are imminent. The investigation has expanded beyond Tupac, revealing decades-long patterns of industry violence. Evidence indicates that both Sean Combs and Jay-Z profited from eliminating multiple competitors, not just Tupac. 3 decades of lies, cover-ups, and corporate conspiracies are finally being exposed. Federal agents have compiled an overwhelming case connecting Jay-Z and Diddy to Tupac's death. 47 documented mentions in federal files, recorded confessions, banking records, and witness testimony, all pointing to the same shocking conclusion. Hip-hop's biggest moguls allegedly built their empires on the bones of the fallen. The truth is finally emerging. Justice is coming. And when federal prosecutors file charges, everything will change. $2 billion empires, one massive conspiracy, and 0 ways to escape the fallout that's coming next. And that's the full breakdown. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this.